Hello friends, so today's video is going to be a list of 23 comics that I would like to get around to in 2023. I did the same style video for manga that I would like to get around to, and similarly with the comics, I am not necessarily putting on myself to try and complete the entire series for each of these, but I at least want to give them a try them out, see what I think of them, and if I really love them, then keep going. But regardless, these are 23 that I would like to get around to. I'm just going to jump right into it. The first one is one that I've wanted to read for a very long time. I've heard phenomenal things, and that would be Saga. I also want to get around to Paper Girls. I know that a lot of times these kind of go hand in hand, so these are the first two. I think that the art itself is so breathtaking, and the colors that are used are phenomenal, but beyond that, I've heard that this is an absolutely incredible story, that it hits really hard and it hits time and time again. It's really poignant. It's really something that a lot of people can connect with, and even if you personally don't connect with the things that are shown, you likely will have more empathy for other people that do relate to some of the things. I think PTSD is a big thing that is explored in Saga specifically, not so much Paper Girls, I don't think. But anyway, Saga and Paper Girls, really excited for both of these. After that, we have Mouse. I've never read Mouse. I know that there's a lot of controversy because people were trying to ban this. It is a story that is showing things involving World War II and horrific things that were happening, but it's done by showing everyone as mice. And so therefore it's almost like a way for younger people to be introduced to these horrific things without it being as challenging to see in a visual form. And regardless, I never picked it up. I know some people actually, I think, did pick it up in school, and I never did. And it's obviously something that's an incredibly important work. I believe the writer, that his family member was directly impacted by these events, and so this is a very personal story for him as well, so it's something that I would definitely like to read. Next up, we have Y the Last Man, which follows the last man that is left alive, and women are still doing just fine. It's men that have primarily died out, and as a result, he is now obviously very important for preserving the human species. And I've heard that it's very funny, but I've also heard that it's kind of hit or miss its humor, and I can be kind of picky with humor in stories. I tend to like very clever humor, but I don't know what kind of humor that I will be getting in Y the Last Man, so this is one that I'm excited for. I think it'll be fun, but I also am very curious to see where I fall as far as just how much I end up liking it. Next up is a reread, but I would like to pick up Fables by Bill Willingham. I think this will be a perfect one to pick up in the fall season. And also, I love Wolf Among Us. I'm still hoping that we do actually get a Wolf Among Us 2 because I loved that video game. It's the only Telltale game I've ever played, and I really liked it. And I'm probably biased though because I really like Big B. After that, we have Bone. I have never read Bone. I have heard that it is absolutely amazing and that it's one of the best fantasy stories of all time, and that you should not be fooled by its very sweet, cute art style, that it is actually very adventurous and very epic and sometimes pretty dark, and that there are some pretty serious consequences. It's one of my husband's favorite stories, and other people who have read it say it is one of the best of all time, and I want to see what all the hype is about. After that, by the time this goes up, I will likely have already read this, but I would really like to read Sheriff of Babylon. This is one of Sean's absolute favorites, and I have been wanting to read it for a long time. I hear it's absolutely devastating, and it's really hard-hitting, and it's touching on real things in our own world, real events. So this is one that I feel like, you know, you pick something else, you pick something up like this, and then you have to go to the silly things like Y the Last Man. You know, you got to balance it out. So this is one that I know it's not all that long, but I think it's going to be very impactful. Next up is one that I am very excited for. I have read some of it in the past, but I didn't read that much of it, and so I plan to restart it and then read quite a bit of it, and that would be Monstrous. So when I read this, I feel like I will have to find a month where I'm not reading as epic of stories when it comes to novels from my main channel. Like, I need to be reading fun, cozy, kind of fluffier works, because this is, I think, very demanding of your attention, and there's a lot going on. So I want to make sure that I can be fully invested when I pick it up again. That said, there's a little part of me that's like, who cares? Because that art, oh my gosh. Next up, I don't know all that much about this one, but I know that it is one of my husband's absolute favorites, and that would be Descender. So I am really excited for this one, but I can't really comment all that much besides just the hubby likes it. I've mentioned that I plan to pick up Rat Queens. This is one that seems like it's going to be a lot of fun, but similar to what I said about Sheriff of Babylon, I will likely have already picked it up and tried it out by the time this video goes up. So if I am really liking it, then I can continue on with it. After that, we have White Sand by Brandon Sanderson. So most of Brandon Sanderson's works are in novel form or in series form, and so you don't see a whole lot of comic books. And this is one that it seems like what occurs in this story is pretty significant to the Cosmere. And if you don't know, if you're not really somebody who reads a lot of books and you primarily read graphic novels, comics, manga, Sanderson's Cosmere is essentially like the MCU. It's this universe, and a lot of the worlds and the characters are actually connected, and so the further into the Cosmere you get, the more you're starting to see those connections, and it's building, building, building. And so every now and then you'll see a certain kind of magic, or you'll see a character, and you're like, what is this from? And then you hear from other people like, oh, that's from White Sand. And the amount of times that something has come up and people say it's from White Sand, and I'm like, gosh darn it, I need to read White Sand. So I am actually doing a Cosmere read-along, and White Sand is planned for a little bit further into the year, so I probably won't pick this up right away, but it is one that I will definitely be getting around to. The next two I don't know too much about, but I have kind of looked into them, and I've heard a fair amount of things that make me think that I would potentially really like these. One of them, I'm not sure if it's pronounced Isola or Isola, but the artwork looks incredible. I think it's kind of a story about trying to rescue someone who has died and bring their spirit back, something along those lines. I've seen mixed things, but I am hoping that I will be in the camp of really like it. It seems like it's going to be a moving story and maybe a little abstract, but the artwork itself looks really beautiful. And then also 7 to Eternity is another one that I don't know all that much about, but what I have seen makes it seem like something I might be interested in. After that, we have another one of Sean's favorites, and that would be Black Hammer. So you'll probably notice that I haven't really had a whole lot of superhero, I basically haven't had any superhero type of comics on this list, and that is intentional. I just don't know that I'm as interested, but Black Hammer seems like one that I would like because it's taking these well-known superhero types and then it's doing something very interesting with them. These next few I'm going to lump together and just say I don't know that much about them, but they look interesting, they sound interesting, and if you have more thoughts and can provide more insight, feel free to do so. So one of them would be Invisible Kingdom. We also have Black Science, and then Usagi Yojimbo. From there, we have Lazarus. This is one that I had read some of, and I'm very interested to get back into it. It's not one that's going to be as fantasy-like as a lot of the rest on this. It's more so kind of our world, and it was years ago, but it's essentially, there are bodyguards that are protecting these very wealthy families, and those bodyguards, it seems like, have been modified to some degree. So it seems like it's a little bit more science fiction a little bit, but it has been years, and I might be a little bit wrong about that. It's been so long, but I really want to get back into it because I liked what I had read of it. Next up, we have Black Road, Animal Castle, and Kabuki. I don't know much about these three either. My husband and I one day were kind of sitting and looking at various different things that I might want to check out from the library, and we were looking at these and we're like, oh, these look really interesting, and we were reading through what they're about. And it's tough because you want to know what they're about, but at the same time, you don't want to know too much because you don't want to spoil yourself. So that would be why I can't elaborate much more on these. I'm not as well versed in this kind of stuff, obviously, as I am when it comes to fantasy books. So I'm clueless, and feel free to treat me as such. But anyway, the last few are ones that do tie to some of the fantasy books that I read. We have Demon in the Wood, which follows a character from the Grisha series, the Grisha verse, and it is following an antagonist character. It's kind of like their backstory, and it was previously, I believe, a short story or novella, and then it was put into graphic novel format. So I would like to read this, and I would like to read it before the second season of Grisha comes out. The second season of Shadow and Bone comes out on Netflix. Then we also have Extraordinary by V.E. Schwab, and this is within the same world, I always say, even though I feel silly because it's our own world, but it's in the same world as Vicious and Vengeful, but it's kind of following some other I believe, other characters that pop up in those stories. It might have some other characters we haven't yet seen, but I am very interested to see what I think of this one. I really like this world, and I have compared some of the setup of Vicious and Vengeful to aspects of X-Men. So I actually think it'd be really interesting to now see aspects of the story in comic book format. And that would be it for 23 comics that I would like to pick up in 2023. And as I'm reading through these and as I'm letting you know my thoughts on them, feel free to let me know what other recommendations you have. Obviously, as I said before, I'm pretty clueless. I'm not well versed when it comes to comic books, and I do really love manga. I love fantasy novels, and so comic books have just always been something I've wanted to get into and haven't. And so this is kind of my way of pushing myself to explore this medium of storytelling a little bit more. So I would love to not only get to do that, but then get to connect with a lot of you with this interest. This is an area where the more insight that you want to provide, the better. I can't wait. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.